Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
J Ballistic Laboratory. Defender Body Armor is now available through InfoWarsStore.com, so you can defend yourself, your family, and finance the info war against the globalists all at the same time. A total...
Welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Monday, April 17th, 2017. Here are top stories.
Tonight, Facebook and Google are targeting Infowars once again. And this time, Google's robo tool is flagging conservative comments as toxic, while at the same time delisting Infowars from its search index as the censorship continues. Then, Putin, Assad, and Ron Paul say the chemical attack in Syria was a false flag. But according to the establishment mainstream media, the false flag in Syria is fake news because it came from Infowars. All that plus the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on the American people. 104 years of federal income tax. That's up next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The reason InfoWars Life has 5-star ratings on major third-party sites is because I want products I'm going to use for my family. I take this, my family takes this, and then it funds the operation with the most hardcore, truthful information you're going to find anywhere. So what you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfoWarsLife.com.
If I ever forget to take them, like I have a noticeable difference. I don't feel good. The nascent iodine is one of the ones that was life-changing for me.
Yeah, I actually have just run out of my super female. I had a few bottles at my house, and I've been taking it again, hitting the gym once again. Very exciting, feeling great, looking good. So, and I know my hair is luxurious once again. So obviously the super female is amazing. I love it.
Nascent iodine is essential. Survival Shield X2. If there's one product that I would say is life-changing that I would suggest, it's Nascent iodine Survival Shield X2. It's got a 5-star rating.
It's a win-win. InfoWarsLife.com.
Today we're going to talk about Google leading the fight against the First Amendment. And I've had many people push back on this and say they're a private company. They can't be fighting back against the First Amendment. That's government that can censor. They can do whatever they want to as a private company. And yes, they can. But what we're going to show you in this news broadcast is how they have a private-public partnership for government control, for government censorship. And it's not just Infowars. We told you it's going to start with Infowars. It's going to go to other news sites, but it goes to your comments as well on any website that you go to. Here's an example. Get Daniel's story today. Google RoboTool flags conservative comments as toxic. This is a program called Perspective API, a machine learning models developed by Google. It's used by a lot of major corporations. And they say, however, what it does is it scores comments as being toxic or not toxic. And it gives them a weight, a percentage weight as to how toxic these comments are. And as you can see from these screenshots here, something like a statement that says global warming is fake, the AI says, well, that's 39% toxic. Global warming is real, that's only 2% toxic. Okay, then you have a bias towards Hillary Clinton from Trump. Trump is looked at as 23% toxic, whereas Hillary Clinton was only 6% toxic. The idea that abortion is murder, oh, that's 62% toxic, whereas abortion is not murder is only 46%. Who's using this? Well, establishment news outlets like The Guardian, The New York Times, The Economist. How do they use it? They want to keep their comments section there so that you participate. Nevertheless, they want to weight these comments, get rid of the ones that they don't like, and it has a very clear political perspective. Now, when these companies work together to suppress a political view, when they have economic benefits that are going to accrue to them when they work with the government, you understand, this is a public-private partnership to censor your speech. It is directed as political speech, and that's what we see happening all over the place. Of course, a good example of this is that this is not anything new. This is something, we had this bombshell screenshots that were sent to us about a specific program. Mike Cernovich sent this to us. I will get to that article in just a moment. But as Jamie White points out on Infowars, this is nothing new. This has been going around for a very long time. While we're just now seeing these revelations about Google specifically targeting us, using us as an example, using a particular story, we're going to talk about the details of that story. He says this is something, as we've been pointing out to you, that as they're setting up their so-called fact-checking and setting themselves up as the arbiters of truth, saying that they have no bias, see, that's fundamentally dishonest. When you go to Google, when you go to Facebook, you don't expect your content to be censored. And I have to say, as well, that when we look at most of the people who are pushing back against this idea that something is wrong here, they say, oh, you know, this is a private company, they can do what they want, but they don't support that when it comes to a bakery refusing to bake a cake for a gay wedding if the bakers are Christian. Who has more influence, a local bakery or somebody like Google, who essentially has a monopoly on internet searches? You have to understand that the argument that was made to shut down these bakeries was to say, well, these people have an open public business, and they're not allowed to discriminate. They won't use that same standard against Google, will they? Because the government wants them to discriminate against political views. And as they're pointing out here, even though differing conclusions may be presented, we think it is still helpful for people to understand the degree of consensus around a particular claim and have clear information when the sources agree. That was a Google research scientist, Kong Yu. They just need to drop off that G. It's really about conning you. That's what they're really doing. They're saying, well, we're presenting this information, and it's being filtered by what's popular, what people are talking about. No, it's being filtered by the political agenda of the people who are running that, the people who are making multiple visits to the White House, speaking with them like Eric Schmidt. They said depending on who was on the shift, things would be blacklisted that were trending. A former Facebook news curator told Gizmodo, he says, I'd come on shift, I'd discover that CPAC or Romney or Glenn Beck or popular conservative topics wouldn't be trending because either the curator didn't recognize the news topic or they had a bias against Ted Cruz, for example. And he says, I think it had a chilling effect on conservative news. That's precisely what it was designed to do. If you think this is a problem, you should also be worried about their concentration of power that they have not only over the information, but Google is also setting up a concentration of power over your transportation. That is another public-private partnership that is being worked hand in glove with a few privileged corporations and the government. The government wants to control, wants to tax and track everywhere you want to go, and of course the corporations want to make money. And so they know that they can get their monopolies from the government if they play ball. Now, this is what happened over the weekend. As we pointed out, we've talked about this on the radio show extensively today. Mike Cernovich was sent some information that Google was taking out a major contract to delist Infowars from its search index. So this is very specific. This is very detailed, what they're doing to Infowars. We've got screenshots here. They're saying things like, you should be mindful of where an article comes from. Again, establishing some places as always truthful, others as never truthful. They're going to vote them up as a low or high confidence level on the search engines. And the example that they gave, I think, is very interesting. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But first, this comment here. Important, negative reputation is sufficient reason to give a page a low-quality rating. Where do they get the negative reputation? Oh, well, that comes from Google, doesn't it? So they tell you whether it's true or not. They tell you whether the place has a negative reputation. A good example of this is the article that they have about Assad saying this is a fake attack. They say, here's an article from CNN, and here's an article from Infowars. Now, the article from CNN is good because it quotes government sources. But the article from Infowars is not good because it doesn't just parrot government sources. It also looks to see what Assad is saying. It looks to see what Ron Paul is saying. Oh, so we must be going, as I say, against the grain, to say the least. You have to understand, if you think this is simply about their freedom to suppress certain information for a political agenda, you have to go back and understand Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird was put together by the CIA. They controlled the news media decades ago to make sure that they control the narrative that you heard. They picked the stories. They picked the narratives about the stories that were going to go out. They worked with those that were at the top who could decide which stories were going to be spiked at CBS, NBC, ABC, and which ones were going to come through, and then what they were going to tell you about those stories. That is precisely what they're trying to replicate with Google, with Facebook. Now, if we look at this article, again, this came out on Friday, the one about Assad, that was Don Salazar's article, U.S. fabricated chemical weapons attack. The videos could be staged. And again, when we reported this, I said at the time, I think that he jumped the shark by saying that nobody died. Clearly, I think people died there, but I think it's interesting, don't you, that they showed the people dying in great detail. Do we see the people dying on the streets as the Islamic terrorists mow them down with the trucks? No, we don't see them slowly dying on camera. If we see any pictures at all, they're blurred out. But these pictures were focused on, and they took immediate action. When you see something like that, when you see it being done by somebody who has no motive, then you should start to question that official government narrative. And now we have, and this came out over the weekend, International Business Time, we have RT, we have Press TV, we have Infowars covering what an MIT expert, a weapons expert who used to work for the Department of Defense, an MIT professor, is saying this is a fake attack. Are you seeing this anywhere in the mainstream media? No. Are you seeing it trending on Google? No. You will not see it trending there. Now, this individual is Theodore Apostle of MIT. He has worked in the past for the Department of Defense as a scientific advisor, and he focuses on the narrative of this shell. We were told, no, it couldn't have been the Russians bombing a chemical plant and then a cloud going over and taking out these people. No, we saw a crater in the middle of the street. So he says, let's take a look at this picture of this crater in the middle of the street. And here's this picture. He says, if you look at the shell, you see that it was not dropped from an airplane. The damage on the casing is inconsistent from an aerial explosion. It was also not an explosion that went from the inside out. He says it's more likely there was an explosive charge was laid upon the shell that contained gas before being detonated. He said the explosive acted on the pipe as a blunt, crushing mallet, and you can see that in that picture. He said it drove the pipe into the ground while at the same time creating the crater. He said there was no competent analyst would miss the fact that the alleged sarin canister was forcefully crushed from above rather than exploded by munitions within. You understand that? You can look at that picture. The very picture that they say shows that this was something that was dropped by the airplane. He said, no, it wasn't dropped by the airplane. It was crushed on the ground. It did not blow from the inside out. It was crushed to detonate it. He says all of these highly amateurish mistakes indicate that this White House report, like the earlier Obama White House report from 2013, was not properly vetted by the intelligence community as they claimed. I have worked, he said, with the intelligence community in the past. I have grave concerns about the politicization of intelligence that seems to be occurring with more frequency in recent times. Now, this is a man who worked as a scientific advisor on the same case in 2013. We've seen this movie before. And he pointed out at that time that Assad was not responsible. The evidence did not suggest that. And that was also verified by the UN at a later date. If we could have taken time to do an investigation, that's what we would have found out. Now, I said before that it is a public-private partnership. What Google gets out of this is money. And when we look at the competition that's going on, this story from Jerome Corsi points out that Soros and Google have been funding net neutrality groups to try to control the internet and to censor Infowars.com. Part of what's behind this move that has been going on between the FCC, whether or not information would be allowed to be sold by ISPs that they're collecting on you, that was spun as an attack on your privacy by the Trump administration. I would prefer that you have control over your own information. I don't want to see people collecting information and merchandising it on me. But of course, that's going on by Google and Facebook. They don't want the competition from the ISPs. That's what's going on here, as well as a competition between different government bureaucracies, between the FCC and between the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. Then there's another one, the FEC, the Election Commission. And that former chairwoman is now calling for regulation of political speech, very direct as to what she's looking for. She wants to shut down political speech. She wants to regulate it, say that if you have a political opinion about something and you talk about that during the election, that should be considered to be a contribution to somebody. So they want to shut it down on that basis. All of this is pushing us along as we see the attacks in Syria, the buildup in North Korea. All of that is pushing us away from what is really happening here in America domestically, the things that we should really be focused on. When we look at tax day this last weekend, what did we see? We saw leftist groups saying they wanted to see Donald Trump's tax returns. Well, some of us want to see his tax reforms, the things that he ran on, the things that should be changed. And we should think about this as this is the income tax weekend, as some people did. Some people protested in front of the Trump Tower saying, we want to see tax reform. I don't really care about his returns. Do you really care about his returns, or do you care about how much taxes you're paying? See, the issue is that the socialists want to push an agenda of envy. That's the way that they can control you. They don't want you to think about how much taxes you're paying. So some people got in front of the Trump Tower. Another group pointed out that over 104 years, we have seen a dramatic change in the income tax. And we need to think about this as we look at Obamacare. Obamacare started out pretty strong. We saw massive increases in premiums as Obamacare came online, but we didn't see that with the income tax. If you go back 104 years ago, in 1913, they created the Federal Reserve. They created the income tax. They changed our tax system so that the taxes became internal instead of at the border, as they previously had been. That was the bias prior to that. Then they made it about taxing Americans, completely inverting everything that Thomas Jefferson was proud of accomplishing in his first administration. He bragged, what internal, what labor or what mechanic knows the tax man? Nobody. We fund the government, and it was a constitutionally sized government. We fund it on import taxes. But in 1913, the bankers got control. And they created the income tax. At first, it was only the very, very wealthy. The top bracket was 7%. Now it's almost 40%. The marginal income tax at that time was 1 to 7%. Now it's 10 to 40%. There were 400 pages of tax code. Today, there are 74,608 pages. And here's the key. In 1913, if you adjust it for inflation, you would get a standard deduction for your family of $98,000. Now you get just over $12,000. And only 358,000 people paid it. That's how these programs grow. And 104 years ago, that's when that began. 81 years ago, under FDR, we had something called the Export-Import Bank. And back in 2015, it was not reauthorized. Why? Because we had a couple of vacancies on that board, and the Senate refused to fill them, so they didn't have a quorum. They couldn't meet. What is it that the Export-Import Bank does? Well, they give money to big corporations like Boeing and GE. And as Reason Magazine pointed out, contrary to lobbyist talking points, the XM Bank is firmly in the business of big business. On the domestic side, 40% of its activities benefit only one company, Boeing. They're very happy that Donald Trump has now said he's going to revive the Export-Import Bank. Over 60% of the bank's financing aids only 10 giant companies like Caterpillar, Bechtel, and General Electric, who pays no taxes. On the foreign side, however, your taxes go to subsidize cheap loans for, in many cases, state-owned corporations like Pemex, the Mexican government's oil and gas giant, or Air Emirates, the airline of the wealthy country, the United Arab Emirates. Do you really want to be taxed to pay for foreign-owned companies? That's what we need to look at. That's the distraction that these military adventures are taking us away from. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Infowars has partnered with Defender Body Armor to bring you a new state-of-the-art line of advanced, highly tested body armor from InfoWarsStore.com. Defender Body Armor is certified to protect against all handgun rounds and even armor-piercing FN 5.7 pistol rounds. The secret to Defender Body Armor is its proprietary processing technology that disperses more kinetic energy at a rate higher than any other traditional body armor. using one of the strongest synthetic materials ever created, called ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. Defender armor is also super compact and lightweight. There's a reason the Department of Defense chose Defender to manufacture their new line of advanced lightweight armor. It works. Defender body armor is made right here in America and has received the highest level ballistic resistance certification from an authorized NIJ ballistic laboratory. Defender body armor is now available through InfoWarsStore.com, so you can defend yourself, your family, and finance the info war against the globalists all at the same time. A total 360 win.
You provided Alex with the caveman.
Well, so we've been formulating this stuff for a while, and we've been getting these different flavors, and oh, I don't know about this one, and so I've been taking that stuff, and I'm an old man. I'm 42. I work out 5 times a week, if not more.
I hear you're okay in jiu-jitsu. That's what I hear.
No, I'm not. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But the point is that I have a lot of aches and shoulders, and there's weird joint stuff that I've had issues with for years. And this bone broth, the caveman bone broth, along with our joint formula, has just worked magic for me. And that's just, that's just from my personal experience. I think they're great products, and I think if anybody else has those issues, that you owe it to yourself to check it out. If I'm wrong, then hey man, write me a mean letter. But let me tell you, they work for me. And so,
yeah, they work for me too. We were talking about this earlier. Du and I play basketball, and I'm just now, like for the first time in my life, I'm 27 now. After I play basketball, my knees are barking. But the bone broth and the joint formula, like you just said, you combine those two. I felt the difference immediately. I felt it immediately.
Yeah, and it actually tastes good. Like, I'm really picky, and I will drink it. It tastes good to me. I love chocolate, so I really like the flavor of the caveman. So, if the bone broth if the bone broth is really that gross, I would never have known, because it tastes really good. And my favorite is the super female vitality. So ladies, get yourself some super female vitality if you haven't already, because it just gets me going. I'll take a whole bunch of that stuff before I go out and do
get it for your wife then too, or girlfriend.
Right? I go and take a bunch of it before I go do man on the street, and I just start running, zipping around, running right into the action. No fear, nothing. So,
well, that's a big primary part about fighting the globalists, is making sure that we stay healthy and stay clear-eyed and stay honest and stay humble. I hope that we do that here at Infowars. We got a lot going on, and we're in the middle of the fight, so we really appreciate it when anybody supports us, either by purchasing our products, or you can even go onto our store and donate. We're doing this by the skin of our teeth. I know it looks like we're in a $1 billion studio, but Alex has never taken 1 cent of borrowed money at all whatsoever. This is all money that's come from you, the listeners. So you have literally built this place, built this place with your compassion, and built this place with the support that you've sent us. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it, because I know we wouldn't be able to do this, and we wouldn't have a voice if it wasn't for you. So once again, we got to thank the listeners for their steadfastness in supporting us. And even when we make mistakes, and even when we're not right, and even when we might go a little bit crazy, you guys stick with us, and I appreciate that.
There was an election this weekend in Turkey, and the results are very interesting, especially for the United States. We have Erdogan winning by a slim margin, and there's a lot of outcry in the country as to whether or not this was an honest election. But also we need to take a look at what is going on in terms of the powers that he is assuming, how this is going to affect their moves towards the European Union, and whether or not it reflects the idea that NATO really is useless, an anachronism. Clearly, he thinks that's the case, because he doesn't mind running through these dictatorial reforms, which are going to keep them out of NATO, out of the European Union. Nobody's keeping them out of the European Union, however. They have a massive, as one of these articles puts it, a massive diaspora. They were campaigning throughout Europe for this referendum, and that tells us something right there. They're not interested in official membership in the European Union. They're interested in making it Eurabia. And clearly, NATO is nothing that they're concerned about at all. Now, as Bloomberg points out, they ratified the supremacy of Erdogan's rule, by taking aim at political opponents both at home and abroad. Supporters chanted that he should bring back the death penalty. Erdogan warned opponents not to bother challenging the legitimacy of his win. He told them to prepare for the biggest overhaul of Turkey's system of government ever, one that will result with him having even fewer checks on his already considerable power. They point out this was a very divisive 2-month campaign during which they went to Europe, remember, and they called people who said, we don't want you campaigning here for your elections. He called them Nazis, as he was going there to campaign for Hitler-like powers. Isn't that interesting? And as Bloomberg points out, he made this decision because he wanted to lobby the diaspora. The diaspora. Isn't that interesting, the way they put that? Because that is what is truly happening. They don't need to be in the European Union. They're going to take over the European Union. The constitutional changes mean that Erdogan could potentially hold the reins until 2029. That's a decade longer than the rule of Ataturk, the father of the modern secular nation, whose legacy he sought to roll back. And I think that's very important. You have to understand that when we look at this competition, and we're going to look at the pushback against the people who follow his opponent, Fethullah Gulen, when you look at that, we always want to think that there's a white hat and a black hat. You know, spy versus spy. There's a good guy, there's always a bad guy. No, a lot of times there's just two bad guys. Both of these guys want a global caliphate. They just want to be the one to run it. And they have, they're just a couple of dictators who are competing against each other. That is a good example of why we do not want to get involved in regime change in country after country throughout the Middle East. We see that even when we have bad people, like Omar Gaddafi, or even Saddam Hussein, when we throw these people out of office, what do we get in their place? Do we get anything that's any better? No. Often we get something that is far, far worse. So no, we should not be getting involved in this. We should not be going abroad, seeking monsters to destroy, as Adams warned us. Says it'll give him greater sway also over fiscal policy, and it will raise many people's concerns about the independence of the central bank. He's going to abolish the prime minister, so forth and so on. And so he is setting up a true dictatorial power there. He has ruled with a very heavy hand, but there is something of a civil war that is going on in Turkey, as many people are pushing back against this, saying that they saw a lot of unusual things that were happening in the referendum. They move on in this direction. International observers who monitored the voting also found irregularities, says the AP. They said the conduct fell short of international standards. Specifically, they criticized a decision on Sunday by Turkey's election board to accept ballots that did not have official stamps, saying that it undermined safeguards against fraud. And it was a very close election, actually. It was 51.4% to 48.6%. An associate professor at Lawrence University said Erdogan has ruled with a narrow victory before. He doesn't see a narrow victory as anything less than a mandate. He's not going to pull back. He's not going to take a look at the suspect ballots. And we know exactly where this is going. It has consequences for us here at home. Again, his competition, Fethullah Gulen, has a lot of ties with the CIA here in America and with a massive school network that we've reported on in the past. Before we go to that, I want to look at a Breitbart article that looks at Islamic kindergartens, and they say it leads to parallel societies and extremism in Austria. This is a study that was done at Vienna University by Ednan Aslan, a Turkish-born Austrian professor. He looked at 10,000 children aged 2 to 6 years old, attending 150 Muslim preschools that taught the Quran, just like Christian schools would teach the Bible. But at these schools where they teach the Quran and kindergarten, they found that at least a quarter of them were backed by groups that propagated arch-conservative strains of Islam, like Salafism, or organizations that see religion not just as a private matter, but as integral to politics and society. Folks, we've said this all along. Islam is not simply a religion. It is a political system. And when you look at Sharia law and the imposition of Sharia law and the fact that most of the people polled who are living in the West now believe that Sharia law is just fine, that should be established in the Western societies. Here's what else he pointed out, and this is why you have to understand that it's not just the people who are coming in this first generation. The second generation will be even more polarized because they create ghettos. He said parents are sending their kids to establishments that ensure that they are in a Muslim setting and that learn a few surahs, okay? But they're unaware that they're shutting them off from a multicultural society. So as they become more and more isolated in these schools, they become more and more ghettoized, and they become more and more resentful of the society in which they live. That's why the second generation is even more dangerous than the first generation. A small percentage of the first generation that comes in will be terrorists. We've seen that already. We know that's going to happen. But an even larger percentage will become terrorists that will have been born in the country that we see because of this type of isolation that is cultural, religious, and legal. Now, what is happening in this country? We reported on this back in December of 2015. There is a competition between Fethullah Gulen and Erdogan. And in this country, we had Fethullah Gulen brought in by the CIA. They wrote letters to get him in because there were those who said, we don't want someone who wants to establish a worldwide caliphate. But now he runs and associates a large network of charter schools. This is something that we need to think about when we look at charter schools that are being pushed by this new Secretary of Education. Already, these charter schools, and they are not specifically religious because they couldn't get the money if they were in the United States. So they do it in a very low-key way, but they get $500 million with a B, $500 million a year of taxes that are supporting these charter schools. And as Mark Hall, who did the documentary Killing Ed, said, these are funds that you and I are giving to our government. They're going directly to this organization. So while in Islamic countries, the Gulen schools are Islamic madrasas, Gulen schools in the U.S. have to carefully avoid any overt religious proselytizing to Islam. But what you see in the schools here in the United States and elsewhere is an intense national Turkification of their children. These are not Turkish kids. These are kids that have a variety of backgrounds, Hispanic, Asian, African American. And you know that they're being taught intensely about Turkey and about Islam. Meanwhile, we see that there's an investigation here in the United States that is being pushed by Erdogan, saying we need to investigate people who have ties to Fethullah Gulen. And we have to understand that both of these individuals, both Erdogan and Fethullah Gulen, have their hooks in a lot of American politicians. Fethullah Gulen, for example, has ties to Chuck Schumer, to ex-CIA Director Brennan. This is allegations from Erdogan. This is the kind of way that they work into our society. This is what we really have to guard against. Meanwhile, very quickly, we're about out of time in this segment, there is going to be a legalization of cannabis, they believe, in Canada. But it's not going to fully legalize it. They're going to leave a lot of tripwires. This is something that we all have to be aware of. They say that they're going to be regulating recreational marijuana by July 2018. They want to be the first country in the G7 to fully legalize marijuana. They've tabled a couple of bills designed to end more than 90 years of prohibition. Despite decades of criminal prohibition, Canadians, including 21% of our youth, they said, and 30% of our young adults continue to use cannabis at the highest rates in the world. Well, of course, the reason for that would be that prohibition doesn't work. It has always failed. And yet, they're going to be, as they're talking about full legalization, they're also talking about massive jail terms if you don't do it within their tightly prescribed boundaries. If you're caught driving high, you could go to prison for 10 years. Stay with us when we come back. Leanne McAdoo is going to have more on Google's delisting of Infowars, their public-private partnership for censorship. We'll be right back.
Why is the fungus? Why is the mold? Why is the yeast taking over? What is going on? What has changed? Dr. Group, the new product, will sell out definitely in days. You've been testing it for almost a decade. You've got rave reviews from your patients who've been taking it privately at your clinics. Myco ZX supports normal fungal and yeast balance, proprietary blend of herbs and enzymes made with high-quality ingredients. It's available at InfoWarsStore.com. We also have free shipping, orders $50 or more, and 10% off when you sign up for auto ship. Additionally, on top of that, and then you fund an organization dedicated to the truth and get something you and your family absolutely need. But you should consult your healthcare provider. This is not a game. This is not a joke, especially if you have really big yeast levels or fungus in your body. There can be some responses to this as you're flushing it. But why is this product so powerful? What does it do?
So we've been doing research just like you have on what's currently going on. Obviously, we stay ahead of the game because our job is to protect and address the root cause of the problem, which is why I've been...
Now, we want stuff for our own kids.
This is why we've addressed the president, let's address the root cause of America's health problems. But getting back to fungus, it's becoming an increasing epidemic that's only getting worse.
Killing bats everywhere, other animals, squirrels are dying.
Funguses were used as bioweapons.
So why is it suddenly killing so many mammals?
Yeah, fungus is a growing epidemic, and I've been testing this formula and making changes to this formula for over 10 years. I've had nobody. Here's the thing, Alex. When you go to the doctor with a list of symptoms, you can look at symptoms of fungus overgrowth in the body. It's going to show, you're going to pull up over 100 symptoms, everything from brain fog, lack of energy, insomnia, headaches, bowel problems.
Joint pain.
It's joint pain. It's linked to Crohn's disease.
Infertility. What about the obesity epidemic? I know they test people that are really obese and like they're just colonized by fungus.
Yeast overgrowth. I have a study right here by Jacob Titelbaum at the Fibromyalgia and Fatigue Center in Dallas. Yeast overgrowth is linked to an average weight gain of 32.5 pounds. What doctor...
By the way, folks, look, I'm not bragging. We game-changed the presidency. We game-changed the New World Order. Globalism is falling because of you. You are the Infowar. Listen, this is religious for me, okay? I do not bring you something unless I absolutely believe in it. And if we were reigned with $1 billion, I would turn 99% of it against the enemy. I want to defeat them. I'm ready to give my life. Everybody knows that, against the enemy. Please, we only have a limited supply of this. I want to get your reviews. I want to hear what you have to say. For me, it's been incredible. Myco ZX, antifungal, antifungus, anti-yeast. Get it today. Limited run. It'll be months till we get more. Infowarsstore.com, InfowarsLife.com. Myco ZX goes great with the bomb defense. InfowarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And you can't support an organization that isn't fighting hard. Look at the response we're getting. We're changing the world together. You are the Infowar. God bless you all. Let's go to Debit in Florida. Debit in Florida, you're on the air.
Great. Hey, thank you so much. Listen, I have bought your product, and I gotta say they're amazing. Anyone who's on the fence, buy it, because I've got Caveman, Superman Vitality, Secret 12, Vitamin Mineral Fusion. I've got the body armor.
Wow, thank you.
Wow.
You're the type of listener that makes it all possible. Which nutraceutical does you like best?
I really like the Vitamin Mineral Fusion, to be honest. That's
amazing.
Really incredible. I drank it in the morning, and I swear to you, I felt incredible. Like I haven't felt weak. My morning was fantastic, and I love you guys. I love the Infowars crew, and I just want to, I want to take this opportunity to tell anybody out there who's on the fence, just buy it. You will love it. I'm telling you, I've never bought a bad product.
What you find in our news is the same thing you find in our products at InfowarsLife.com. It's a win-win. InfowarsLife.com.
Well, it's a new week, and that means brand new attacks on Infowars.com. This time, Google is going out of their way. They've taken out a major contract to delist Infowars from its search index entirely. Now, this is coming from Mike Cernovich, who broke the story here while he was in Austin, Texas. His sources were so shocked by this latest attempt by Google to isolate and destroy Infowars that they wanted to send them out the actual documents that were sent out to hundreds, if not thousands, of contractors who are working for Google. So they've hired these contractors to remove Infowars.com from its search engines. All these contractors have been instructed to actively rate Infowars as a low quality and untrusted site. Of course, this is going to have the effect. They're not going to outright ban us using this technique, but this is a new way that they can game their algorithm so that Infowars articles will start to slowly fall off the front few pages, if not go all the way to the tail end of the Google searches, because people will no longer link on them if they are rated as an uncredible source. So now Google is further instructing these contractors to rate us low to medium in our acceptability rating. They're saying that's generous, but they're doing that because some people might be searching for alternative voices than what the mainstream media is telling them. Oh, my goodness, who would even think about doing such a thing? But then they go on to attempt to differentiate between Infowars coverage of Assad's comments from CNN's, who they say is a popular news source that covers the story with a depth and mostly straightforward reporting. To compare, Infowars' article is brief and only mentions statements from sources not really typical. Putin, Ron Paul, Assad himself, which seem to be making the same case here that bolsters the site's previously held perspectives which cut against the grain, to say the least. Can't have that now, can we? Can't have any alternative voices that cut against the grain. But it doesn't end there. So basically now they're wanting to go out of their way to ban us entirely, all because we said, hey, wait a minute, let's not drop bombs on Syria right away without getting an independent investigation. This has all the markings of a false flag attack, or as we pointed out, it's not as if this didn't actually happen, but that it would be used politically regardless of who actually launched these chemical weapons, because there was no independent investigation. We just immediately went in with the airstrike there. And so because we said false flag, we're going to be banned from Google. They're going to say perfect example of fake news. You can't trust them. When we were quoting mainstream articles and mainstream sources, we've got Business Insider doing a report on this, Breitbart, New York Mag. But according to Google, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, former U.S. Congressman Ron Paul, and Syria's President Bashar al-Assad are not valid sources to cite in a news article. Take a listen to what they said.
We have information from various sources that a similar provocation, and I can't call it anything other than a provocation, is being prepared in other parts of Syria, including the southern suburbs of Damascus, where they're again preparing to release some similar chemical substances and accuse the Syrian authorities of using them.
We cannot take it seriously, but our impression that the West, mainly the United States, is hand in glove with the terrorists. They fabricated the whole story in order to have a pretext for the attack. It wasn't attack because of what happened in Khan Sheikhoun. It's one event. It's a stage one, the play that we saw on the social networking and on TVs, the propaganda, and the stage two is the military attack. That's what we believe is happening.
Before this episode of possible gas exposure and who did what, things were going along reasonably well for the conditions. You know, Trump says let the Syrians decide who should run their country, and peace talks were breaking out, and Al Qaeda and ISIS were on the run, on maybe defeated. So it was like, you know, in spite of their problems with this foreign policy, it looked like there was some benefit, but it looks like maybe somebody didn't like that, so there had to be an episode. And the blame now is that we can't let that happen because it looks like it might benefit Assad. So Assad, they claim, now went and released gas to kill a bunch of people. But, Daniel, we might not have much of a job here today because I looked at the New York Times to find out, to get the explanation, and they said, worst chemical attack in years in Syria. U.S. blames Assad. So it's all over and done with.
But now we're being told that we're crazy, we're fake news for just not immediately buying into the narrative that's being pushed by the president and now the mainstream media. The mainstream media who just a week, 2 weeks ago, was saying President Trump was a Russian agent and we must resist and we can't trust him at all. And now all of a sudden they're fully behind him. Now that he's going to go to war, they're behind him without asking any questions. So that's pretty incredible to see happening in real time. But veteran and state representative Tulsi Gabbard is also coming under fire for saying we need to be a little bit more patient. And yes, I am skeptical. She is skeptical that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad authorized the use of chemical weapons. Again, it's the timing.
Well, Wolf, I remind you about what happened before we launched an invasion and occupation of Iraq. Then Colin Powell and many others within the administration came to Congress and came to the UN claiming they had the evidence proving that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. We launched a completely destructive, counterproductive war based on that intelligence, which has now, years later, proven to be wrong. So yes, I'm skeptical.
And now we have jihadists and terror groups that are actually going to seize upon the fact that they can now just produce a chemical weapons attack or stage an event, and President Trump is going to be quick to act with no investigation needed. As long as it serves them politically, they will go ahead and launch more of these propaganda videos. But now, even though this is a targeted takeout by Google, this censorship there is not an isolated incident. They have been gaming the algorithms for quite some time. As we've pointed out, they've been gaming our view count on YouTube. They've been censoring us. They delisted us from ad roll and, you know, cut off our money supply there. But they've also been gaming the algorithms for the election. Here we've got Google censoring Hillary Clinton's health problems. When Don Salazar and Paul Joseph Watson did these articles, they were showing how if you went to the Google search engine and typed in Hillary Clinton's health or Hillary is, it would just say Hillary's an angel. She's so perfect health. She's wonderful. But if you would look it up on Bing, it would go to Hillary's health problems, health issues, head injury, whereas at Google would say her health plan, her healthcare plan, this wonderful angel goddess that we all need to elect. Same thing happened. It would hide any searches for Clinton's body count. Same thing. Google would absolutely game the algorithm there, censor any negative information. Even though Clinton body count is an infamous term, it's been around for decades. Just these people that massive amounts of people who just so die that are in the Clintons' inner circle. But if you looked it up on Bing or Yahoo, they would pull out the Clinton body count fact sheet and others. And so we also reported how WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange was quick to remind everyone that Google was directly engaged with the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton. He said the chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, actually set up a company to run the digital component of Hillary Clinton's campaign. So that was reported by courts in 2015. They said an under-the-radar startup known as The Groundwork was funded by Schmidt to ensure that Clinton has the engineering talent needed to win the election. So we can see Google has absolutely been politicized. They've been compromised. They are now part of the deep state. So they want to take out anyone who is an enemy of the state, enemy of Google and George Soros, and they're wanting to build this empire to go ahead and control the internet. They want to take anyone out who is going to expose that plan. They've been politicized, and now they are weaponizing their algorithms, their seemingly innocent search results. So they're going to start with Infowars, but believe me, folks, if they can take out Infowars, take down Alex Jones, free speech and free and open internet is done for everyone.
And all you ISIS people threatening us, hey, we're not a French newspaper, okay? We got people that have taken your asses out in this building right now. We're armed to the teeth, and we're not scared. You got that, you sons of bitches? This is Texas. You want to threaten me, you can go straight to hell. You understand that?
Never water yourself down just because someone can't handle you at 100 proof. It's the Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
Alex Jones here with a very important news update to anybody out there that wants to be prepared. But it goes beyond being prepared. Our bodies absolutely must have the good halogen iodine or we will die. And you look at all of the thyroid problems and all the people that don't have energy and that have all sorts of hormone problems. And from my research and a lot of just mainline research, it leads back to iodine over and over and over again. It's as important as vitamin C. If you don't get iodine, you die. But most people are just deficient, so they're low energy, they're sick. You got to have iodine in your body so that your body can produce the hormones you need. It is the base to so many things. And since I got into iodine 4 years ago, we've helped change the entire paradigm by developing and bringing to the public deep earth crystals from 7,000 to 12,000 feet of the purest iodine available. Other iodine comes from the ocean or from other byproducts of chemical facilities, and it's tainted. It's bound. It's not absorbable. I tried it. And I had incredible effects even with dirty iodine because the body needs it. When you don't have iodine, it absorbs the chlorine, the fluoride, and all these other bad halogens. Do yourself and your family a favor and check out the importance of iodine for yourself. I think you're going to be blown away. And whatever you do, support the broadcast and get a bottle of Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2. Also consult your physician because if you've been deficient in it or have other issues, it can have some dramatic effects. As for me and most folks I talk to, it's been a game changer in the positive column, but still consult your physician because iodine is no joke. It's a key building block of the body. And if you haven't had it for a long time and suddenly have it, some folks say they've experienced things like a detoxing effect and things like that. You've got to have vitamin C. You've got to have iodine to live. You've got to have water to live. Iodine is key. You must have it, but consult your physician first before you get powerful Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2 at InfoWarsLife.com, or call toll-free. We can answer your questions, 888-253-3139. I'm not gonna sit here and take it anymore. They don't tell you the communists poured in, took over, were murdering hundreds of thousands of people, millions total.
And then the hunger began.
In street performances like this one, designed to fuel public fury against America and its ally Chiang Kai-shek, everything connected with the West or with capitalism was condemned as bourgeois filth.
North Korea has employed each of the 5 acts characterized as genocidal through executions and state-sanctioned murders, the systematic use of torture, state-induced mass starvation in political prison camps and elsewhere, forcible abortions and infanticide, and the forcible transfer and enslavement of children.
Shocking details have emerged of the exact manner in which the uncle of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, was brutally executed, with reports saying he was stripped naked, thrown into a cage, before being eaten alive by 120 starving dogs.
In Kim Jong-un's workers' utopia, General Hyun Yong-chol stood right at the front. Yet the 4-star general and Minister of Defense has been wiped from the face of the earth. General Hyun was apparently killed or pulverized by anti-aircraft fire.
Malaysian police now say Kim Jong-nam, estranged half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, was killed by the deadly nerve agent VX. 2 female assailants caught on surveillance cameras allegedly rubbed the poison on Kim's face in an airport 2 weeks ago.
MIT Press has come out, our supposed top technology university, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and how to teach children in elementary school how to be communist. It's a textbook on how to be a communist. MIT Press publishes a children's book titled Communism for Kids. Talk about disconnected from reality, but they're not. This is what the establishment wants.
You know, so often in the past, there's been a sharp division between left and right, between capitalist and communist or socialist. And especially in the Americas, that's been a big debate, right? You know, you're a capitalist Yankee dog, and you know, you're some, you know, crazy communist, you know, that's gonna take away everybody's property. And I mean, those are interesting intellectual arguments, but I think for your generation, you should be practical and just choose from what works.
Capitalism works with the communist. And that was actually something true out of his mouth. Big mega banks, big ultra-rich combines above the law, tax exempt, they go and they set up or work with authoritarian, communist, you name it, regimes for slave labor and total control. No labor union problems there. The quote was, there's little difference between communism and capitalism. Communism is completely unrealized and fake. It's just a pseudo system created by British intelligence and put out through Karl Marx and Engels to get the giant revolting peasants of the world, the Russian serfs, the German serfs, everybody else, to go into a new cosmology of, oh, you don't want to be on your collectivized serf farm? We'll take you away from your little farm that had some culture and ship you 1,000 miles and really put you on a slave commune, and that's how you rebel against the man. And that's the Animal Farm. That's what Animal Farm's all about, the communist Bolshevik revolution and what happened in Russia.
The laws of Animal Farm were inscribed in a prominent place, to be remembered and obeyed forever.
No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
4 legs good, 2 legs bad. That was only till the pigs kicked the humans out, moved into the house, then they started walking on 2 legs and said, 4 legs good, 2 legs okay. And by the end, 2 legs good, 4 legs bad. And the old workhorse that helped the revolution come into power, and it was honorable and good, when they were done with that old horse that worked himself to death, they loaded him up, sold him to the humans, and took him away to be turned into glue and chopped into dog food. Might want to read Animal Farm. From a devout communist that was at the highest levels of British intelligence, setting up the communist, and then realized it was all about enslaving humanity and Satanism. Go read the letters and books Orwell wrote before he died that were nonfiction. All communism is feudalism with new feudal lords.
The Tommy Burst has automatic bolt action. Fire off a burst of 10 shots. Pull the bolt again, you're reloaded. The exciting new Tommy Burst detective set includes wallet, badge, and ID.
We interrupt our regular program schedule to bring you the following special report from ABC News in Washington.
As President and Commander-in-Chief, it is my duty to the American people to report that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply.
In retaliation for this unprovoked attack on the high seas, our forces have struck the bases used by the North Vietnamese patrol craft.
It would allow the president to wage war in Vietnam.
Israel claims the attack was accidental. Some former U.S. naval officers say it was on purpose. They describe the day's action as part of a continuing cover-up.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Now is the time to check the aggression of this ruthless dictator whose troops have bayoneted pregnant women and have ripped babies from their incubators in Kuwait.
They had kids in incubators, and they were thrown out of the incubators so that Kuwait could be systematically dismantled.
Pearl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There was a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say
every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction.
We came, we saw, he died.
10 days ago, the world watched in horror as men, women, and children were massacred in Syria in the worst chemical weapons attack of the 21st century.
The Assad regime, and only undeniably the Assad regime, unleashed an outrageous chemical attack against its own citizens.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets.
We can tell you beyond any reasonable doubt that our evidence proves the Assad regime prepared for this attack.
Yesterday morning, we awoke to pictures, to children foaming at the mouth, suffering convulsions, being carried in the arms of desperate parents.
On Tuesday, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad launched a horrible chemical weapons attack on innocent civilians.
What is your message to President Assad?
The world is watching. The world doesn't do anything.
Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children.
We know that yesterday's attack bears all the hallmarks of the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons.
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons, and they are beautiful pictures.
This live special report has come to you from ABC News, Washington.
Boy, did I almost look stupid.
That's it for tonight's news. Remember, we still have that Easter special that's going on, 25 to 30% off. We appreciate you standing with us. Join us again tomorrow night for the Infowars Nightly News, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
I am very proud to announce the introduction of the highest quality Infowars Biome Defense Probiotic. We wanted to come out with the largest spectrum of high quality known probiotics that have been proven to improve overall digestion and health and detoxification in the body. Biome Defense is an exclusive blend of 50 billion live and active cultures from over 23 different probiotic strains that are known to support digestion and intestinal function. Our researchers are confident that we have been able to develop what will be the leading probiotic on the market. Secure your Biome Defense in ultra strength or regular strength at InfoWarsLife.com today and get started supporting your digestive system naturally. We've been testing this formula for years, but this is the limited first run to the public, so please take advantage of it today. Support your own health and support the InfoWar.